So today's article is India's moon rover confirms sulfur and detects several other elements near the lunar South Pole. And I know I've been going over this a lot, guys, but you have to understand why. I mean, this is, one of the top stories now. And it's only going to ramp up with this space presentation. So I'm going to stick on it. Let's go into it. It won't take too long with this article, but there's some things I wanted to point out. This is from the AP. And you guys know I'm not pulling like deep journal articles about space. I'm not like rifling my way through, astronomy journals, astrophysiology and shit, astrophysicists. I'm not doing that. I'm just reading you mainstream news articles because I want to kind of highlight what's being presented through mass media to the indoctrinated masses, how absolutely absurd it is. Let's get into it. India's moon rover confirms sulfur and detects several other elements near the lunar South Pole. New Delhi. India's moon rover confirmed the presence of sulfur and detected several other elements near the lunar South Pole as it searches for signs of frozen water. Nearly a week after its historic moon landing, India's space agency said Thursday. Well, here's what I'm wondering, guys. I tend to ask questions like this. I mean, I am the Zetetic warrior, means to proceed by inquiry, so let me live up to my name with my questions. Well, why would you need to send a rover up there with this, high-level advanced technology? Why would you need to do that when apparently we went to the moon like a bunch of times in the late 60s and early 70s, and we actually brought back samples from the moon. Like, they tell me we brought back like dirt from the moon. All right. Well, if we brought back dirt from the moon, why not sample that? Why do you need to go into like what they're going to present us with, these probes and stuff? And then you'll say something to me like, oh, well, that was, a different part of the moon. They're on the South Pole. And I would say, okay, well, how about this? If it was so easy to go to the moon and back with men, why can't we go to the moon and back now and just bring the samples back? No, Z, but you don't realize they need guys up there to blast off, and you have to have, the LEM where it comes down and lands, and then Really? Why? If in 1969 you can do it with that basic technology, you can't do it with like drone and wireless technology? If you were doing it in 1969 and in the early 70s multiple times, any logic or reasoning mind would be able to understand that they'd be able to go there easily and take samples back. You wouldn't have to have the advanced technology that I'm about to read you to just, take, readings and try to then interpolate and interpret what the soil composition may or may not be. Do you understand what I'm saying, guys? You would just go there, take a sample, and get it back to Earth, and then analyze the actual dirt that you can touch. You wouldn't fucking do what I'm about to... See, I don't want to get upset. I come on here, and I start, and then my music stops because I get all disjointed, and then I, lose my thinking because I engage in this, I don't want to get emotional about it. I know some of you guys like when I get emotional, but we don't have to do it like that. I could just calmly read the article. I could speak rationally on it, and, we can go from there. It doesn't have to be this whole thing where I lose my shit. I know, Heidi, you're asking me to stay balanced. You're reminding me, and I appreciate that. So, all right, I'm balanced now. I'm balanced. I got my music reset here, and we're going to approach this rest of this article in a rational way. All right, let me do that now. All right. So my point is, guys, you wouldn't need to have these advanced sensors sampling and taking data and sending it back and then try to interpret what the soil is. You would just have a craft that would bring the soil back. That's it. End of fucking story. That right there, what I just said should debunk this whole fucking thing for you guys. Anybody who's still clinging to this dumb story. Let me continue with this ludicrous story as I try to keep it balanced, as Heidi says. The rover's laser-induced stereoscope instruments also detected aluminum, iron, calcium, chromium, titanium, magnesium, oxygen, and silicon on the lunar surface. The Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, said in a post on its website. Oh, great. So it was basically sulfur and then all the other things I just said. But notice they had to use a laser-induced stereoscope instrument. Oh, really? I'd like to hear how that technology works. Like I said, why not just bring the soil back? Oh, no, Z, they can't because you got to blah, 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 blah. No, you can. If you brought men back, if you shuttled men to and from the moon like 5 or 6 times, basically 50-some years ago, you could do it again without the men, remotely. Isn't that obvious? No, but they're going to use a laser-induced spectroscope instrument on their stupid rover. The lunar rover had come down a ramp from the lander of India's spacecraft after last Wednesday's touchdown near the moon's south pole. The Chandrayaan-3 rover is expected to conduct experiments over 14 days. The ISRO said, just 14 days? You got the rover up there? What else? What's it going to do after that? Anyway, the rover unambiguously confirms the presence of sulfur, ISRO said. It also is searching for signs of frozen water that could help future astronaut missions. That's a potential source of drinking water to make a rocket fuel. Right, like I said before, first of all, would you drink water from the moon if you were an astronaut? I don't care how much you filtered it. That'd be weird. And 2, oh, you're telling me you can make rocket fuel out of water? Well, how's that? Like I said, why wouldn't we just be making rocket fuel out of water here if we could do that? They say we could use electrolysis to separate the hydrogen from water, so why not just do that here? But you could do it on the moon. Let's continue. The rover also will study the moon's atmosphere and seismic activity. Yes, seismic activity. They're just going to hope there's an earthquake on the moon while it's up there. Anyway, ISRO Chairman S. Somnath said, on Monday, the rover's route was reprogrammed when it came close to a 4-meter wide crater. Ooh, good thing. It's now safely heading on a new path. The ISRO said the craft moves at a slow speed of around 10 centimeters, which is 4 inches per second, to minimize shock and damage to the vehicle from the moon's rough terrain. After a failed attempt to land on the moon in 2019, India last week joined the United States, Soviet Union, and China as only the 4th country to achieve this milestone. Good job, India. Way to go. Great job. The successful mission showcases India's rising standing as a technology and space powerhouse and dovetails with the image that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is trying to project. An ascendant country asserting its place among the global elite. The mission began more than a month ago at an estimated cost of $75 million. Right, like I said before, it costs less to go to the moon for India than it does to make a movie about the moon. Guys, you understand these blockbuster movies are like $100 million budget, $150 million, $175 million. But India went to the moon for less than it cost to make movies about the moon. Does that make sense? No. India's success came just days after Russia's Luna 25, which was aiming for the same lunar region, spun into an uncontrolled orbit and crashed. Sorry, Russia. Better luck next time, dummies. It would have been the first successful Russian lunar landing after a gap of 47 years. Long time. I guess they were rusty. 47 years is a long time. Russia's head of state-controlled space corporation, Roscosmos, attributed the failure to the lack of expertise due to the long break in lunar research that followed the last Soviet mission to the moon in 1976. Active 6 to 9. This is going to be... I want you to listen to this last couple sentences here. Just last sentence. 2 sentences, which is funny. Active since the 1960s, India has launched satellites for itself and other countries and successfully put one in orbit around Mars in 2014. Did you guys know that India was putting things around Martian orbit in 2014? And that they were launching satellites in the 60s? I wonder if you guys really think about that, guys. The first satellite wasn't launched into space until I believe it was like 1956, potentially 55 by the USSR. Sputnik. So Sputnik was up. So the Russians did it in the 60s and the 50s. But you're saying that in the 1960s, India was putting satellites up in orbit? Does that make any fucking sense to you? No, it doesn't. The timeline doesn't add up. So you're telling me Russia figured out how to do it in the mid-50s, but by the 60s, India was doing it and putting satellites up there? No. I'm not buying it. You shouldn't buy it. The story falls apart, guys. It doesn't make sense. The story doesn't add up. If this was a trial by jury, like, it'd be open and shut. But y'all just believe it. And you believe they put a satellite in orbit around Mars? Fucking Mars in 2014? Nah, come on. And finally, India is planning its first mission to the International Space Station next year in collaboration with the US. Now, I want you to think about this. So now they're going to tell you India is going to be able to now dock and shuttle people back and forth from the International Space Station. Well, let's think about it. So first, when they, quote unquote, built this International Space Station, they said that we were using the shuttle, the space shuttle, to do it. Okay. Then apparently they retired the space shuttle in 2011, I believe. And it wasn't until 2020 that Elon Musk developed his Dragon capsule and his Falcon rocket in 2020 that's now shuttling the astronauts back and forth to the International Space Station. And in between it, I believe they were saying Russia was doing it. So from 2011 to, or whenever the International Space Station was built, which I believe was, actually I don't know the date exactly, but put it this way, in between the shuttle program, which shut down in 2011, and the Elon Musk SpaceX thing in 2020, apparently Russia was bringing, people back and forth to the International Space Station. So first it was the shuttle, then it was the Russians with their technology, then SpaceX was doing it now. And now they're saying India is going to be having missions to the ISS. But let me ask you guys, does that make sense? Do you think they would take the risk of these multiple independent organizations shuttling, docking with the International Space Station? Does that make any sense to you? Do you know the degree of error that you'd be dealing with by having these multiple independent organizations try to engage into this collective endeavor? You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't just have the Indians designing their own shit and going to bring it up there. You wouldn't put lives in danger like that. You would have a plan. You would have a method. You would have collusion and cooperation. You wouldn't have independent agencies docking with the ISS. It'd be too hazardous and too dangerous. You wouldn't do it. It strains credibility, it strains credulity, and it's just fucking phony and fake. None of it's true. Zero of it. You guys got to start opening your eyes and see through. Just think. You just have to think, people. You wouldn't allow India to design its own fucking technology to dock with the ISS. You wouldn't have these multiple organizations doing it. It doesn't make sense. It's a lie. It's a joke. I'm tired of it. Hopefully people will wake up. Maybe they will. Maybe they want us to wake up. Maybe they want this to crumble. Maybe guys like Z and others like me were just doing what they want us to do. They can't admit that they've been lying for all these years, so they need guys like us to do it. Blow up their spot, order out of chaos anybody, Phoenix rising from the ashes. Maybe they're ready to implode this whole thing. Maybe they're using guys like me to do it. I don't know. Either way, I'm not going to shut the fuck up about it. Christy Lee Doll says exactly. That's right. Christy Lee Dolls gets all hot and bothered when I do this, as she's gyrating her hips nude under her covers. That's right. Not like that's going to help me, Christy Lee Dolls, as you're down there in deep south, getting all hot and bothered by Z. But no, what does she do? She just pick up the phone and call Z? Does she shoot Z a text message? No. She's going to open up her fucking Tinder, her Bumble. She's going to swipe right furiously on every 6'3" Chad that she comes by. And she's going to invite him over to take care of business. Meanwhile, I just sit here by myself staring at a wall day after day and night after night. Thanks, Christy Lee Dolls. No help to me. Yeah, Robot Saturn, hot and bothered. God, give me a break. She says, no more dating apps for me! Exclamation point. It's funny. Yeah, and Indoctrinate says, imagine going to an astronaut interview, and when they say, what special skills do you have to be an astronaut? You say, I can take a dump in a shop vac, like, toilet. Yeah. Guys, we've talked about this. Like, the bathroom on the ISS debunks the whole thing. You don't have to go any further. See, this is the high-level information that Z brings you. It's really just called critical thinking and logic. You can't take a dump in space. The logistics of it don't work out. You can't have like a bunch of people, guys and dolls, floating around in a fucking tin can, having to take dumps, take pisses in space, sweating, puking, ejaculating. We talked about sex in space, guys. It doesn't add up. You just can't do it. You wouldn't do it. And like I said, now they're sending them fucking Indians up there. No offense, Indians, but I've had Indian food, guys. I've talked about this. Chana masala. Chana masala runs right through you guys. Talk about having the squirts. So now you're going to send these Indians up to the ISS now that they're a big space powerhouse? So I'm up there with my Indian, astronaut. And he's like, oh. I'm like, what are we going to have for dinner tonight, guys? And he's like, oh. Let's have some Indian food. I'm Indian, of course. We're going to have some chana masala with your curry and shit. Next thing you know, we're eating. I'm like, oh, this is good, Ahmed. Thanks. Appreciate it. I don't know, that might have been a Muslim name. I don't want to be racist, but that's good. Insert Indian name. I love chana masala. Then all of a sudden my stomach starts to gurgle, and I'm like, oh, guys, excuse me. And they're like, oh, Z. Again, I'm like, sorry, it's the chana masala. And then I got to go over into the corner of the ISS. And like Unindoctrinated says, get the shop vac fucking toilet out to take a dump. You know, I got the squirts in space from the chana masala that the Indian astronaut just had. Dumps in space don't work. Bowel movements in space are impossible. Zero-G bowel movements are impossible. I just debunked the ISS right there with chana masala and bowel movements. You don't have to go any further than that. I don't need to be like Nathan Oakley and adhere to the scientific method dogmatically over and over and over again, day after day. I don't have to talk about elevation angles on a curved adjacents compared to a flat baseline for celestial navigation. I don't need to talk about the impossibility of, a molten yet magnetic Earth core that obviously goes past the Curie point of magnetism. I don't need to talk about that. I don't need to talk about, the radius value and where that comes from and the lack thereof. I don't need to talk about the impossible Earth curvature and that there's no evidence of it because we see way too far. I don't need to talk about that. I don't need to get all scientific on everybody to debunk space and debunk the stupid ISS and the dumb globe. All I need to talk to you about is irritable bowel syndrome in space and the impossibility of a bathroom in space. And I could just leave it right there. I'll debunk the whole globe using that example. To me, it's just a sound. Who needs a scientific method when you have that?